he only stole a loaf of bread, yet was sentenced to 19 years in prison. Every day, he did the hardest physical labor. On this day, he was finally released. Before his discharge, the warden wanted to make things difficult for him. He put forward an impossible request, to carry a flagpole weighing hundreds of kilograms to him alone. Jean Valjean exerted all his strength. A miracle happened. He lifted the flagpole and walked to the warden. The warden had no choice but to hand over the release order, but Jean Valjean discovered that the release order labeled him a dangerous criminal, and his release was only on parole. He had to report to the police station every week. Jean was furious. He had stolen the bread only to save a starving child, yet was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During his incarceration, the warden targeted him at every turn, and his sentence was extended to 19 years. Now that he was about to be released, he still couldn't get true freedom. He hated the warden Javert deeply, but he had no idea that the world outside the prison was even crueler. After his release, he searched everywhere for work. However, no one was willing to hire a dangerous man who had just been released from prison. He tried to beg in the town, but was driven away by the police. Even children bullied him, throwing stones to chase him off. In the evening, he hid in a stable. When the owner heard he was an ex-convict, he insisted that he leave. Snowflakes began to fall from the sky. Jean was cold and hungry. He collapsed in front of a tombstone. Suddenly, a priest appeared before him. This was not a cemetery, but the backyard of a church. The priest invited him into the church to take shelter from the snowstorm, and prepared a hearty meal for him, as well as a warm bed. But Jean was already desperate for the world. He stole the valuable things in the church, and fled into the night. But before he could sell the stolen goods, he was arrested by the police again. The police asked the priest to identify his crime. However, to everyone's surprise, the priest said that all these things were gifts for him. He picked up the expensive candlesticks on the table, and said that Jean had left in such a hurry, that he had forgotten to take the most valuable things. The police had no choice but to release him. The priest then admonished Valjean, telling him to make good use of these silverware, to be an honest and upright person. Valjean's heart was touched. More than 20 years of injustice had made him despair of human nature, but the priest had pulled his falling soul back, teaching him what kindness and love were. He decided to turn over a new leaf. He tore up the release order that symbolized darkness. He was going to start a new life. 8 years passed. Jean Valjean had completely changed. He changed his name to Madeleine. Through hard work, he set up a factory, and even was elected mayor. But the world was still so cruel. The poor still lived in hunger. Homeless people were everywhere on the streets. Jean Valjean could only try to save more people. But even so, the workers still squeezed each other out. A female worker was bullied by others together, because she was beautiful. Jean Valjean was about to go over to mediate, when he looked up and saw a familiar face. He tensed up instantly. After meeting the warden Javert, Javert did not recognize him. He had been transferred to this city to become the police chief under Jean Valjean. He only thought Jean Valjean was very kind, like an old acquaintance he had met before. Jean Valjean was terrified, daring not to look at him for too long. But at this moment, an accident happened outside, which almost exposed Jean Valjean's identity.